this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 17 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Today we're going to discuss committee business. I have a couple of points that I'd like to get on the agenda. The first is a budget for the study of the review of Budget 2025. This was when we had the PBO come. It is in the amount of $2,250. It was circulated to all committee members. Is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt this budget? Yeah, thank you. It's a bit retroactive. Thank you. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that the motion adopted to create the study on the use of offshore tax havens stated that 6 meetings were to take place. At the moment, 5 meetings have taken place, and the list of proposed witnesses has been exhausted. So I just wanted to let folks know about that. I have Mr. Turnbull on the list so far, so we'll begin there. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm hoping that we can, have a productive meeting today. Hoping that perhaps I can appeal to my colleagues across the way. We've on 2 or 3 occasions, I think it's 2 occasions now, have attempted to move a motion to study the Budget Implementation Act. We know that act will eventually get referred to our committee. We know that members opposite have had access to the details on that and for quite some time now, and in fact that eventually this committee will be responsible for studying all of the Budget 2025 measures that are all included in the BIA. So we've attempted to do a pre-study a number of times with no success. In fact, the members opposite had voted to adjourn debate on multiple motions. So I'm hoping today that perhaps we can get to a point here where we all agree that this committee's got to fulfill its mandate and study the BIA. So I'm sort of proposing here that a 5-meeting study on the BIA would be quite reasonable to hear testimony. I'm sure my friend Gabriel Saint-Marie, who was on this committee with me previously and was quite reasonable. I know he's standing in for his colleague today, but I know that he's a very reasonable person. I think he's always proven himself to be willing to do the work in this committee and to have. Well, Mr. Lefebvre, you're newer and haven't got to know you yet, but so far I know that you've voted with your party to adjourn debate, unfortunately, on my two motions to study the BIA. So I'm hoping that we can get there. And just so I know, Chair, how many resources do we have today? Like how far into the day can we go with this meeting?
I'll have to confer with the clerks, Mr. Turnbull.
If I could just check on resources.
We'll have to get back to you on that. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to appeal to my members opposite and see if they're reasonable and willing to start a study on the BIA. I would humbly evoke something called the SIMS protocol, which is an informal practice that is been used in many committees to ask opposition members or ask members in a committee a question without ceding the floor, because I do have a number of motions that we've put on notice. I'm sure members opposite have received those. We could obviously speak to those, and I'm prepared to do so today. But I wondered if there was any change of heart, if a study of the BIA was something that the members were willing to entertain today. So I'll just evoke the SIMS protocol, if that's okay, Chair, just to see if there's any response from members. Okay. All right. So I see no signs that opposition members are willing to do the work that this committee clearly is supposed to do. So I will move the following motion. Given that Budget 2025 announces the government's intention to move forward with a range of productivity-enhancing measures that would allow businesses to A, write off the cost of their investments more quickly, including the reinstatement of the accelerated investment incentive. B, immediately expense manufacturing or processing machinery and equipment. Immediately expense clean energy generation and energy conservation equipment and zero emissions vehicles. D, immediately expense productivity enhancing assets, including patents, data, network infrastructure, and computers. E, immediately expense capital expenditures for scientific research and experimental development. And B, these measures will lower Canada's marginal effective tax rate, or METR, by more than 2 percentage points, putting it at the lowest rate in the G7. C, the Conservative Party of Canada's 2025 election platform contained pledges to make Canada's METR more competitive. The committee undertake a study of the productivity superdeduction measures contained in Budget 2025 and the Budget Implementation Act, and consider all testimony from said study as part of its consideration of the Budget Implementation Act. So that's the motion that I'm moving today. I'm quite excited by how these measures in the BIA address some of the longstanding concerns. Did you get your hand up? Yeah, okay. That addresses some of the very long-standing concerns that have been flagged by the Bank of Canada and the Deputy Bank of Canada Governor. So these are things that we've heard about for a number of years, that Canada's productivity needs to increase, and that there were ways to boost productivity in Canada that the Government of Canada should be considering. I think, it goes without saying that the measures that are outlined in the motion that I just moved are ones that will significantly increase investment in Canada, will allow businesses. I ran a business for 13 years, so I'm an entrepreneur and business owner. Grew a good size, small company, I would say, but I know very well, how challenging it can be, especially in tough economic times when your balance sheet of a company is not that great. It's very tough to then be able to justify making investments that would boost your productivity and enhance your growth and make you more profitable in the long run. But it's tough to do that when your balance sheet is not great, when your cash flow is struggling or strained, when you can't see when you're sort of running a business and you're worried about paying your monthly expenses. It's very tough to put significant investments into the business to grow it. And, many small and medium-sized companies are in that predicament today. And it's, no fault of the government's, but our economy has gone through numerous shocks, right? The global pandemic was a significant shock. The after effects of those supply and demand side shocks were significant, with supply chain disruptions that we all know about and lived through. And now with the trade war with the United States, we can see that there's another significant economic shock that has raised uncertainty in our business environment and all across our economy. And that's truly challenging our businesses at this time to be able to make investments in themselves. Obviously, being able to immediately expense things like new machinery and equipment, is significant, because as a business owner, and I said this previously, you put away money to pay your taxes, and if you know that, by purchasing, say, $100,000 piece of equipment, which is cheap for a piece of equipment, could be a lot more than that, could be millions of dollars for new equipment. But by knowing that you're going to be able to immediately expense that equipment, that machinery and equipment that your business needs, that would increase productivity and allow you to get greater output, you're not really able to do that unless you know that you're going to be able to immediately expense it. If you can if you know you're going to be able to write it off, you can literally take money out of the account that you're saving to pay your taxes and spend some of it on your business and invest in yourself. And that's, I think a good way for the government of Canada to incentivize behavior in our economy that is going to see significant gains at a time when Canadians and the business environment is struggling. And I think that's, it directly counteracts some of the uncertainty in the investment environment and allows businesses to invest in themselves. And it's not just me that says that. There's lots and lots of other people that agree with us. In the Budget 2025 on page 87, we've also shown very clearly that the marginal effective tax rate in Canada would be significantly improved. It's actually already, statistically anyway, it's already really good. Canada's already the lowest in the G7 in terms of meter, but this makes it significantly even more competitive than the United States by far, more competitive than the OECD average, more competitive than the G7 average. Canada is literally the lowest marginal effective tax rate in the G7 by a significant amount. So Canada's meter would be 13.2% after this measure. So currently we're at about 15.6%. With this set of measures, I should say, the productivity super deductions, as we've coined the phrase, which I don't know who came up with that, but a super deduction and a productivity boosting super deduction sounds pretty good to me, especially right now. So let me just take a moment and point out that I know Mr. Kelly, who sits on this committee, has made many comments in the House of Commons about productivity boosting. I have lots of quotes from him that demonstrate that he's concerned and been concerned about productivity in Canada, yet for some reason doesn't want to study productivity boosting tax deductions for businesses across Canada. I wonder what the people in his riding would feel about that, how they would feel, how his Chamber of Commerce, I know how my Chamber of Commerce feels about it. I know how the Canadian Chamber of Commerce feels about it. I know how the Ontario Chamber of Commerce feels about productivity boosting tax deductions. I know they're supportive, and we have statements from each one of the major organizations across Canada. I often thought in past, I remember my dad telling me when I was a kid that, conservatives were supposedly supposed to be more focused on the economy. And what's interesting, because at this point it seems like even the Conservative Party of Canada doesn't seem to want to support businesses in this country, doesn't seem to want to actually address the productivity challenges that they have pointed out many times over. So Mr. Kelly, for example, has said, so where is the plan to deal with the crisis and bring down inflation, reduce food prices, increase housing supply, and increase productivity in the Canadian economy? So he points to the fact that productivity is a problem. He's also said on October 9th, 2025, when investment dollars leave the country, that means there's no investment in plant and equipment and technology, which would help drive up productivity so that Canadians can earn more and live better, fuller lives. I mean, that's a great quote. It's a great quote because I agree with them. And it's very tough, because sometimes we don't agree in the House of Commons, in the parliamentary proceedings. We have these vigorous debates. But there are moments when we find things that we all agree on. I think this is one of these things that every Conservative that I know in my riding would agree with. They agree with the fact that boosting our economy and productivity is part of Canada's path forward. It's part of building a stronger, more resilient economy. It's also part of increasing the standard of living for Canadians all across the country. Why? Because what we need in this country is we need a continued real wage growth that outpaces the cost of living. And I think Conservatives have pointed to this. We've pointed to it. Documents have pointed to it. There's associations that have pointed to it. The Bank of Canada has pointed to it. And I'll go through all of those statements because I think the case is compelling. It's compelling. It's so compelling that I can't see how any member in this committee or in the House of Commons could be doing justice to their constituents by voting not to either study this or voting against these measures in the House of Commons. It's kind of shocking, actually, because when a company can invest in new machinery and equipment, when it can invest in energy conservation, energy generation, zero-emission vehicles, other forms of assets, research and development, intellectual property, when it can invest in new technology, i.e. new computers and data network infrastructure, those businesses are naturally going to be more competitive and more productive. And so what it just strikes me that, you know, again, when I talk to businesses in my riding, when I present to my Chamber of Commerce, every single business owner that sits around the table at those conversations says, oh, this is great. They're very happy with the Government of Canada moving forward with measures that will boost investment, that will allow them to make those updates, that will allow them to be more productive, have higher outputs, and essentially be more profitable. What that means for us, again, is that those businesses can afford to pay their employees more. They can, you know, obviously pay dividends to their shareholders as well because they're more profitable as a result. There's many ways in which those productivity enhancements will boost the standard of living for both investors but also for workers. And I think that that's what's so exciting about these measures. So I know Mr. Kelly also is a big fan of productivity because he said, and I quote, businesses would generally love to invest in plant, equipment, technology, and things that would increase productivity. But in this country, he said, there is no opportunity. Well, that's striking because now there is opportunity. There's opportunity in this budget. There's opportunity for Mr. Kelly and other members of this committee to support productivity-enhancing investments. I think it's clear to me that many of them should be supporting. Another one of my favorite quotes from the member for Niagara South said, Canada's productivity has slipped badly among G7 nations. Why? Capital is staying on the sidelines as confidence lags. Investments in equipment, new innovation, and business efficiencies are on hold because of basic economic uncertainty. This is the essence of productivity. The last thing our economy needs right now is uncertainty, yet here we are. Which is interesting because, again, this speaks to the moment we're in and how the budget 2025 responds to that. It responds directly to the uncertainty and sees the opportunity in that uncertainty to boost productivity at a time when Canadians really need it. I have another quote from a Conservative member from Langley Township, Fraser Heights, Taco Van Popta, I think his name is. He said, to drive the kind of growth Canada needs today, we are redoubling our efforts to attract investment, increase productivity, and boost innovation. He said most recently in the 2025 budget speech just a couple weeks ago, the current finance minister had this to say about productivity. The government is fully focused on productivity, boosting, doing more with less, because that is the best way to raise the standard of living. He says, I agree with that, and I applaud them for at least recognizing there's a problem. So it's interesting. Conservatives, time and time again, will recognize that productivity is a problem, that GDP per capita. I remember for several years being in the House of Commons having, under previous leadership, where Conservatives had pointed to, they pointed to GDP per capita as being a key measure in the economy. Now, I'm of the opinion there's a lot of other measures to economic health in Canada. We could talk about wealth distribution. We could talk about a whole bunch of other factors and measures to assess the overall health of Canada's economy. But I do agree that productivity has to be addressed, and that stagnating productivity is exactly what this budget proposes and addresses through these super deductions. Another member also said, I have been here for 6 years, and in all that time, things have not improved despite the government's promising that it was going to improve productivity. The time is now. Well, I couldn't agree more with that. The time is now. So the time is now to support productivity enhancing measures like these super deductions. And I think there's many business leaders and organizations across Canada that feel the same way that I do, that they want this BIA to pass swiftly, not without debate. I believe that we should have vigorous debate on aspects of it, but they want it to pass swiftly. For example, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Scott Pearce, the president, was, and I'll quote him, says, Canada's productivity super deduction is a strong signal of leadership on economic modernization. It shows a clear commitment to working in partnership with municipalities, provinces, and territories to deliver solutions that meet the needs of Canadian communities and businesses. Municipalities are ready to help drive investment in clean tech and advanced manufacturing, ensuring local economies benefit from these incentives. So there you have it, the president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So just imagine your municipality. So each one of the members of this committee serves in ridings. They have at least one or probably more municipalities that they represent or support. And we're saying that the head of the federation of all of those municipalities is excited about the strong signal of leadership that these super deductions demonstrate. And because I think there's a widespread recognition that municipalities are partners, but that these super deductions are welcome news in terms of being able to help drive investment. And let's not forget, when the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada was here, she answered my questions on numerous ones. I think she answered 3 or 4 of my very simple questions about whether these deductions, immediate expensing, would boost investment and boost productivity. So she answered in the affirmative at least 3 times that I remember. And then the governor stepped in because I was probably stepping over some imaginary line, which was asking him about fiscal policy. But he said, look, we know where this is going. And he basically said, yes, they're all going to boost productivity. They're going to boost productivity because, he said, anything that encourages and incentivizes investment is going to help boost productivity. So it's interesting here. We have Conservative members that are for addressing productivity. They've recognized that purchasing new machinery and equipment, for example, are aspects of how you can boost productivity. Obviously, it's easy when you're talking about manufacturers and processors, but even the purchasing of assets is included here. This is part of the forthcoming BIA document that is still being worked on a little bit, but the point is that even purchasing new real estate for businesses. I had a really good conversation with a manufacturer in my riding just last week called Timbrin Industries. They've been making the casings for bearings for trucks, and they're now extending into light-duty trailers, of which there's hundreds of thousands that are sold in Canada every year. So they're very excited about this because it's a market opportunity for them where they can see themselves expanding into a market that has great potential. And when I told them, so they didn't know, they hadn't heard about our productivity super deductions. When I told them about the things that we were proposing to do in the BIA, they were elated. I've never seen like two business owners so happy because essentially the cost of them, you know, and I won't reveal any, you know, private information really, but like in the millions of dollars of investment that they would need to be making in updated machinery and equipment to undertake a sort of a pivot and a growth strategy that seizes a real market opportunity for them at a time when everyone is struggling and the economy, I mean, actually, like I should revise that. The economy is growing and exceeding expectations, in fact, in a number of significant ways. And I know that Conservatives have a hard time admitting that because it doesn't fly with their doomsday narrative that they like to spin. But it certainly is the case that when these numbers, when job numbers exceed expectations, when GDP growth is beyond what was anticipated, when real wage growth is outpacing inflation, that these are significant indicators of some strength and resilience in the Canadian economy. But my message to you is that that's only going to get better if we support, so maybe that's really the issue here, now that I think it through. Maybe the Conservatives don't want to support this because it essentially makes them look bad. So they would rather not support productivity-enhancing investments and tax deductions for businesses, because if the economy is successful as a result of that, they look bad. They look bad because the economy is not in a slump. It's not going down. It's not in a decline. It's not the doomsday narrative that they like to spin. And I think that's the real issue at stake here. It's the real thing that it strikes me that that's probably why they don't want to study a motion that, like the one that I'm putting forward today, which is to really unpack. And actually, you know, perhaps after my speech today, there will be enough evidence entered into the record that Conservatives and Bloc members will just agree with the budget, perhaps, because I have prepared so many quotes and so much information on this that really substantiates an argument that no reasonable person, I almost feel like using the reasonable person test here, you know, is Gabriel Sainte-Marie still reasonable? Is he controlled by the Bloc leadership to say he cannot support a BIA study? You know, it would be great if we could do a study on the BIA and actually unpack how all of these measures are truly meaningful for boosting our economy. It would be really wonderful. So let's look at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce for a moment. So Rocco Rossi, President and CEO, was quoted by the Globe and Mail about the productivity super deductions. He said, "The productivity super deduction is a game changer for Ontario's business community. By allowing immediate expensing of productivity-enhancing assets, the province's manufacturers and innovators will be better positioned to compete globally. We urge swift implementation to maximize the benefits for Ontario's economy." So I know Ms. Kobina is in Ontario. I don't think the other Conservative members are in Ontario, but so that's the Chamber of Commerce for Ontario that says that this is a game changer for the Ontario business community. So I'm not sure why she doesn't support productivity super deductions, because it seems that the Chamber for Ontario, which speaks for all of the chambers, including in her riding, and they urge us for swift implementation to maximize the benefits for Ontario's economy. So it is, you know, by blocking the BIA, by not being willing to study it, you're essentially delaying the implementation of things that would benefit Ontario's economy, that would benefit businesses in your riding. So how is that responsible behavior for a member of Parliament to be working actively against the interests of the business community in their riding? So I know that I can hold my head up because I'm actively working in the interests of businesses in my riding and advocating for measures in the BIA that directly support them to be more productive, to make investments in themselves, to have a lower tax burden, to be more competitive globally. That's exactly what the Ontario Chamber has said. That's exactly what the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has said. How is it acceptable? How do you look yourself in the mirror when you're not willing to step up and support your local business community? I can't understand that. It's irrational to me. So it has to be about partisan politics because there's no other explanation for why members wouldn't support a BIA study. So how about, let's look at another stakeholder, very important stakeholder, Clean Energy Canada. Moran Smith, Executive Director, was quoted in CBC News. I know members opposite don't like the CBC, but I know the Bloc members like Radio Canada and CBC, but Conservatives always complain, so we should use a different source, I guess. But no, I'll use it anyway. Budget 2025 super deduction for clean energy investment is exactly the kind of policy Canada needs to accelerate the transition to a net zero economy. Provincial and municipal leaders have a vital role to play by deploying these technologies and ensuring communities reap the rewards of new jobs and lower emissions. So again, another stakeholder pointing to the fact that, these super deductions help with clean energy investments, allow businesses to adopt that clean energy technology, and, of which, I should point out that when in my previous life, when I did audits for businesses to look at how they could, reduce their costs, both cost of goods and cost of operations, they could, integrate energy efficiency measures into their businesses and often get significant cost savings for their businesses, which again would enhance their profitability. And so a lot of the clean technology has a really good business case for it, because the more you integrate it, the more you save. And that's what's great about energy efficiency. There's an initial capital outlay, which is an investment initially in some often new machinery or equipment, or a new mechanical system for a warehouse, or, there's quite a few different options. But the point is that once you make that payment, you are essentially going to be saving money for decades. And what's interesting is that the productivity super deduction applies to clean technology and electric vehicles. Again, these are measures that will allow a business to save on their taxes exactly the amount that they invest in themselves, while also saving money for decades to come. That's just good business. That's just good business. I mean, it's clear to me that Moran Smith understands that from Clean Energy Canada. It's clear to me that businesses in my riding understand that. I think businesses in general understand what benefits the government is offering. Let me just pivot for a second to another important feature in Budget 2025. On page 88, I don't know whether members have had the chance to review this, but I think by now we've all had lots of opportunity to read through the budget. Page 88 says, investing where it counts, catalyzing private investment through accelerated depreciation and immediate expensing. What I like about this, box in the budget is that it sort of outlines the economic impacts for all of Canada based on these measures. So I'll read it out and then maybe explain it just to highlight the key pieces that I think are really important. So private investment in new machinery, buildings, and technology is one of the most effective ways to increase productivity, helping workers produce more in less time and boosting Canada's long-term growth. I remember, I think I quoted that actually when the governor of the Bank of Canada was here, and he agreed with that statement. I'll go on, though. Immediate expensing and other forms of accelerated depreciation make it easier and more attractive for businesses to invest by allowing them to deduct the full cost of new assets more quickly. This lowers the cost of capital, strengthens the business case for modern equipment, which is exactly what I was just saying, and encourages companies to invest and expand in Canada. Now, this is the part that really strikes me as significant, because members opposite want real GDP to grow in Canada, I would think. Now, I know they didn't like the numbers when they came out, when we just had good numbers come in that Canada's real GDP in third quarter was 2.6%, way beyond market expectations, and they did not like that. They shouted me down in the House of Commons because they couldn't stand the fact that I was bringing good news to the House of Commons about Canada's economy. So anyway, let me go on to this next part, and I'll quote it. This is again in Budget 2025, page 88, if members haven't had the chance to read it yet. The $2.7 billion in average annual support for investment provided through the accelerated depreciation and immediate expensing measures included in Budget 2025 will crowd in private capital investment and could generate an economic output of up to about $9 billion annually over the next 10 years. $9 billion annually over the next 10 years. So that's $90 billion over 10 years of crowding in new investment. So that's not insignificant. That's not insignificant. 90 billion over 10 years. And I would venture a guess that is just the direct benefits. But if we looked at the indirect and the induced benefits, as economists would do, that it would be far beyond that. The multiplier effects would be way beyond that. So it would be interesting to do a study on that. And we actually have the opportunity to do that, because that's exactly what I'm proposing, gentlemen. No one seems to be paying attention anymore. Well, that's unfortunate, but it's clear that they don't want to pay attention because they're not interested in supporting productivity-boosting investments. These measures would mean most assets in the manufacturing sector would be eligible for immediate expensing, lowering the cost of capital and unlocking billions in private investment. So do we believe in the industrial base of our economy? Do we want to see that grow? Because members across the way stand up in the House of Commons every day and talk about saving jobs. They talk about softwood lumber industry. They talk about, the steel and aluminum industry. And we're with them on wanting to protect those industries. We're actually doing things in this budget that will not only just protect them, but help them grow and be successful. And boost their productivity and growth and be more competitive globally. So how could they not want that? If they're really serious about wanting to protect our industries and actually support them, then maybe they should actually support them by voting in favor of productivity-boosting super deductions. Now, I wanted to highlight how much new investment would be crowded in, and I also wanted to highlight how much these measures really mean to our manufacturing and processing industries in Canada, because we know that Canada has a really large natural resource base. We're strategically advantaged in that regard. I know members from all parties recognize that. But a lot of what we have to do at a time when we're in a trade war, where we're trying to decouple the Canadian economy from the United States and really ensure that it can grow and thrive, despite the fact that we're likely going to do less trade with the United States in the future and more with a diverse set of other trading partners from around the world, that in order to do that, we need to have a strong manufacturing base. We need to grow that base, but we also need processors in our supply chain. We need to turn raw material into finished products here in Canada so we can ship those to other parts of the world. By doing that, we retain more value in the supply chain here in Canada, and also can boost lots of opportunities for Canadians and have lots of job opportunities. So I think this is part of what we're up to. When we talk about raw aluminum, and I know a lot of the Quebec MPs are very concerned with, and so as am I, I'm concerned with the negative impacts of the trade war on the aluminum industry. And we've done a lot to help those impacted industries, but we can continue to do more. One of the things that I've heard and reviewed when I reviewed statistics on this was to look at how Canada can build the processing capacity and finishing capacity to produce aluminum products here in Canada instead of shipping raw material over to the United States, having it processed and finished, and then buying it back often, which is the case in many of our other supply chains because our supply chains had been so integrated for so long. So the reason that, again, I'm highlighting why productivity super deductions, which again focus on purchasing new machinery and equipment, new assets, new intellectual property protections, new other forms of information technology, but also clean technology and integrating that into their business models, and even offsetting the R&D cost, which is often way up front. So all of these things allow for supports that would enhance processing and manufacturing in Canada. So those types of businesses who I know we all believe, I mean, I'm certain all members on this side believe and are with me on wanting to support Canada's industrial base to be stronger and more self-sufficient in the future, that's part of what it means to be the strongest economy in the G7. That's part of what it means to build a more resilient economy here in Canada. But let's see what the Association of Equipment Manufacturers had to say about this, for example. So Alexandre Martin-Michaud, I'm trying to pronounce it in French, so I don't know if I'm correct. Not bad. He's the Director of Government Affairs at the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, had this to say about productivity superdeductions. He said, and I quote, "For the Association of Equipment Manufacturers and its Canadian members, the budget offers promising signals on productivity, trade infrastructure, and workforce development. The introduction of a productivity superdeduction would allow businesses to immediately expense all new capital investments, including manufacturing and processing buildings acquired after budget day and used before 2030. This measure, and phased out gradually between 2030 and 2033, is a direct response to industry calls for accelerated depreciation to spur business investment." Now, I forget how many members that they have, but I'm venturing a guess that there are thousands of members of that association that individual is speaking on behalf of. So you've got thousands of members that are equipment manufacturers in Canada. I could be wrong, so I shouldn't say, but maybe we could look that up and clarify. But many members of that association that person is speaking on behalf of has said that this is a direct response to industry calls for accelerated depreciation to spur business investment. So again, this goes to the heart of what I've been saying here and what I'm building the case for, which is that we want more investment. Do the Conservatives want more investment in Canada or not? It seems that they don't. So in my view, there's only one way to interpret this. When you have, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, when you have the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, when they have the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which I'm getting to in a second, when you have the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, when you have other industry associations all saying that this is a direct response to what they've been asking for, which is going to boost investment in business investment in Canada and help us grow a stronger economy. How can you be opposed to that? I can't understand. Carlos, my colleague, please help me understand how can anyone be opposed to that after saying over and over again in the House of Commons and in committee that this is exactly what they want to see. This is the kind of thing they want. I said it in the House of Commons on Friday last week. I said the Conservative Party has been in opposition so long, they become so disagreeable, they can't even find it in their hearts to agree when it's something that they've advocated for. This is like, it's mind-boggling. But I guess that's the state we're in at the moment. I noticed the member for Newmarket had said, Ms. Kobina had said in the House of Commons, and I quote, "Our GDP is struggling, our productivity is down, our purchasing power is crumbling, the unemployment rate is rising, and tariffs are hurting our industries. The purpose of the budget is to bring order to uncertainty." Well, that's interesting. So it sounds like she wants productivity to go up. She wants GDP per capita to go up, but then isn't willing to support the things that everybody else in Canada believes are going to boost productivity. Even the Bank of Canada governor. Like, how do you disagree with the Bank of Canada governor and deputy governor on this? They've studied it for a long time. So let me just, I was going to get to another quote that I had, which was really, really good. So again, you have Equipment Manufacturers Association said this responds directly to the call to spur business investment in Canada. We also have the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. So before I spoke to the Ontario Chamber, I spoke to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities chair. Now we're speaking of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I met with them last week. Again, also talked about these measures. They were elated. They couldn't be more happy and overjoyed for these measures. Now, I have a quote from Alex Greco, Senior Director of Manufacturing and Value Chains. So the quote from him, from Alex, is, "Budget 2025 represents a real shift in direction. With the budget having passed yesterday, we're seeing a move away from consumption-driven stimulus toward investment, productivity, and a more deliberate industrial strategy," which is exactly what I've been saying. He also said, "Manufacturers I've spoken to," so this is Alex Greco saying this, generally welcome the signals, strong language on competitiveness, new capital investment tools like the productivity super deduction, and a clearer focus on growth. The overall tone is more aligned with the conditions industry has been calling for." So again, another positive review from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. So the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, I have about 800 members of the small business community in my riding of Whitby, and I love my small business community, I have to say, because I was a small business owner and helped other small businesses get started. I love working with small businesses. I love the agility and the way in which they create value and think about their businesses. I love how strategic they are and how much they're often focused on family values. That's something I really relate to. But what's clear to me is that the Canadian Chamber is representing, you know, in my riding, 800 roughly members in the chamber, but like every riding in the country has a chamber pretty much. I mean, maybe not everyone, but many, many of them. And they probably have thousands in other areas. Like my town is a little bit smaller, that I'm sure our chair and my colleague here, Mr. Letao, they probably have bigger chambers than mine. And I'm sure members across the way have big chambers. They all feed their input and feedback up through the different levels to the national organization, the federation, you know, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, that federated model. And the chamber then speaks to us on behalf of the business community all across Canada. And what they say is that they welcome new capital investment tools like the productivity super deduction and the clear focus on growth. So again, is it the intention of members on this committee to disagree with their chambers and say, no, sorry, we disagree? Productivity super deductions are not welcome? They're not helpful? Is that really the position of Mr. Kelly and the Conservative members on this committee? Is the position that productivity doesn't matter now? It seems so. How about we have an Alberta Innovates, and I highlight these because there's support across the spectrum. It's not just in Ontario. Alberta also has not only the government of Alberta, but Alberta Innovates also support productivity super deduction. So even, you know, like it's not just in constituencies or with stakeholders that are skewed in some aspect of the political spectrum. This cuts across every political party and political point of view because it's not political. It's really just about boosting our economy. What is wrong with that? How come Conservatives don't want to support that? So Alberta Innovates, the CEO, Laura Kilcrease, was quoted in the Financial Post on December 1st, and she said, and I quote, "Alberta's innovation ecosystem stands to benefit significantly from the federal productivity super deduction. Immediate expensing for R&D and clean tech investments will help Alberta companies scale faster and attract global capital. We look forward to working with provincial and municipal partners to ensure these incentives reach the innovators who need them most." So another glowing statement of support for the productivity super deduction, again, which is a package of all of these immediate expensing and accelerated depreciation measures, which are, I think been well received by many. So that's Alberta. Here's one from the government of Alberta. So Nate Horner, Minister of Finance, also quoted in the Financial Post on December 1st. So same article. Nate says, and I quote, "The productivity super deduction aligns with Alberta's strategy to drive investment and innovation. Immediate expensing for R&D and clean tech investments will help Alberta companies scale faster and attract global capital." He said, "We support measures that empower our businesses to compete and grow." So I like that. He said, "We support measures that empower our businesses to compete and grow." I think that should be the statement from this committee. If we were to undertake this study, pre-study of the BIA, with these measures being called out or segmented so that we could study them in depth, we would, at the end, I bet, conclude, we support measures, i.e. the members of this committee support measures that empower our businesses to compete and grow. That should be a universal statement for members of Parliament. Do we not value our businesses? They're the ones that employ the workers that everyone here says that they are wanting to protect and advocate for. These productivity gains are going to boost the standard of living, are going to boost real wages in relation to the cost of living, are going to boost GDP per capita, are going to enhance our businesses to grow, scale, attract global capital, attract domestic capital as well. I can't understand how the folks on this committee that are from Alberta, for example, could disagree with the finance minister of their province, who clearly has said productivity super deductions align with Alberta's strategy to drive investment and innovation. So how can you disagree with that? I mean, maybe you could. Maybe you could make an argument against productivity super deductions, giving businesses tax breaks that are welcome news for them, that they look forward to, that they're elated and happy about. You can be the naysayers and the detractors of that. You can disagree with your own business community, with your own province's finance minister. But I tell you, I'm with my finance minister in Ontario on this. Peter Bethlenfalvy is the Minister of Finance. He's from Pickering, so just a couple of ridings over from me. And he's a conservative guy, but a reasonable conservative, a progressive conservative, someone who I can get along with because he's rational, reasonable person. And I actually quite like him. He's a nice guy, and we get along. And this is what he had to say. So in addition to the finance minister in Alberta, the more progressive Conservative Party in Ontario, their finance minister has said virtually the same thing. He said Ontario welcomes the federal productivity superdeduction as a timely boost for our manufacturers and innovators. He says this measure will help Ontario businesses invest in new technologies and equipment, supporting jobs and growth across the province. We look forward to working with Ottawa to ensure these incentives deliver real results for Ontarians. I mean, that's another finance minister from another conservative-run province that is arguably a different conservative party than the Alberta one, but still they shared the same viewpoint on a Liberal government proposed set of productivity tax deductions for businesses to help them invest, make capital investments. They overwhelmingly agree that these are how you boost investment and innovation, how you enable businesses to compete and grow. Let's go to an NDP mayor now. How about the mayor of the biggest city in Canada, the city of Toronto, Olivia Chow? I'm sure members opposite don't share her political views on many topics, but that's okay. At least we can find common ground in parliamentary proceedings. We can have debate. That's the meaning of dialogue, by the way. It's actually the root of democracy. If you look back in Greek philosophy, dialogue is supposed to be about getting to the truth together and not being attached to our points of view so much that we won't allow ourselves to admit when somebody else is being more reasonable than us, and eventually finding common ground is what democracy is supposed to be about. Well, let's take common ground here. So you have two conservative provincial finance ministers. Now you have an NDP mayor of the biggest city in Canada. So Olivia Chow says, Toronto's economy stands to benefit from the federal productivity superdeduction. By supporting investments in advanced manufacturing and clean technology, this policy will help build our city, create good jobs, and build a more sustainable future. We encourage all levels of government to work together to maximize these opportunities for Torontonians. So that's in Toronto. I know Toronto's not the center of the universe, don't get me wrong. But it is one indicator to have, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that reasonable people across the political spectrum, whether they're NDP, whether they're conservative, whether they're really right-wing conservative or maybe more progressive conservative, they all agree that the productivity superdeductions are good for Canada's economy, are good for businesses, are good for our ability to compete for global capital. So let's take the opposite end of the spectrum. So on the other side of the country, we have the city of Vancouver. Ken Sim, I got to meet him this summer, actually, when I did pre-budget consultations. We didn't talk about superdeductions at that point, but we did talk about other issues in the city of Vancouver, of which there are many. And which the budget does also respond to, by the way, because we listen to stakeholders across the country. But on productivity superdeductions, he had virtually the same thing to say, which is, again, aligned. Now, I don't know his political views, whether he's, more NDP or conservative. It actually doesn't matter to me, really. But, let's just hear what he had to say. Quote, the productivity superdeduction is a welcome step for Vancouver's business community by supporting investments in clean energy and advanced infrastructure. This policy will help our city deliver on climate goals and economic growth. Collaboration between all levels of government is essential to ensure these benefits are realized locally. So again, almost the same kind of statement as the mayor of Toronto, but you have two mayors in major cities. You have finance ministers in Ontario and Alberta agreeing. You have the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. You have the Canadian Federation of Canadian Municipalities. You have the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and you have the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, all agreeing that productivity superdeductions, I don't know how many times I can say that word, productivity superdeductions, are a good thing. I mean, just listen to the name. They sound like a good thing, don't they? I mean, supercharging our economy has got to be a good thing. But I think it is, the case is overwhelmingly clear that you can't spin this as a bad thing. There's no way to spin it as a bad thing. And I mean, the indication is it's going to have a 3-time multiplier just in direct benefit for attracting and crowding in more private capital. That's straight from our budget. And that's consistent with other numbers that I've seen. That doesn't include indirect and induced benefits. So I guess the Conservatives and the Bloc members don't actually want to see our economy grow and multiply and attract private capital and support our local business communities, support our industrial base, build the infrastructure we need, get our clean energy to markets far and wide. It's striking. Let's take a look at a commentator, so economist, Linda Nazareth. So Global News commentary on productivity superdeductions. Linda is an economist and commentator, wrote an op-ed about this in Global News, and said, Canada's 2025 budget correctly flags productivity as a crucial economic issue and includes measures meant to boost it. With the economy under pressure, the government's new productivity superdeduction could be a successful way to get businesses to invest money at a time where their inclination may be to pull back. That's exactly what I've been saying, is that instead of pulling back, that they're going to take some risk on themselves and invest in themselves, that's going to boost their ability to get through the challenging times that we're in. So here's the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada quoted in Investing News, Nicholas Vincent, April 3rd, 2025. So Nicholas says, Canada is facing a systemic problem when it comes to productivity. To put it bluntly, we're stuck in a vicious circle. There is no quick or easy way to improve productivity, and no single sector can do it alone. If we want to fix this, we'll need to be thoughtful, systematic, and resolute. So, again, pointing to the problem, and when we had the chance to speak to the Bank of Canada representatives that were here, again, they confirmed on the record that these immediate expensing measures were going to be very helpful. Now, they're not the only things in Budget 2025 that will boost productivity and growth, right? There are many others that we could talk about and point to. But I think these ones are significant. They're significant to me because when I toured the country in the summer, and I got to do a lot of pre-budget consultations right across Canada, from Cape Breton, the tip of Cape Breton, all the way to Iqaluit, all the way to Vancouver Island. I got to talk to people in Victoria, got to talk to people in Iqaluit, and everywhere, or many places in between, not everywhere, but, of all of those, one of the things that stood out to me, there were a number, of course, but one of them was that businesses really needed a bit of a hand to make these kinds of investments, that this was a long-standing issue that hadn't been fully addressed, and I think that now we've deemed that this budget was really the time to dive into the productivity problem. or stagnation of productivity in Canada and really get the economy moving and stimulating it at its base, the real fundamentals of the economy. And I think that's exactly what these immediate expensing measures do. So let's look at, here's another example, a tax and estate planning professional from CIBC Private Wealth Management. So the managing director's Jamie Golombek was, and I'll quote him from an article on March 28, 2025, quote, "These are helpful measures that many businesses have been asking for. Some of them parallel changes that were made in the U.S. recently in terms of their ability to write off capital costs of various expenses." He then said, "When you have a business that's in the manufacturing and processing area, the ability now to write off 100% of the cost of that building as opposed to depreciating it over time is a huge incentive for businesses to be able to recoup for tax purposes the investment associated with that new facility." Again, another glowing statement of support for the immediate expensing measures, the productivity super deductions in budget 2025. So you've got tax professionals at CIBC Private Wealth Management, you've got the Bank of Canada, you've got the Chamber of Commerce, you've got economists. Like, how many other, I mean, I would love to have some of these people come to this committee, or maybe we don't need to. Maybe we just should pass the budget right away and get it done. What do you say, folks? I mean, I think that might be even easier than this, because it's almost painful to have to outline all of the support to the members. I mean, I'm happy to do it because we are happy to put the work in to make sure these things get done. Like, I would be doing a disservice to my community members, to my local economy in Whitby, if I didn't fight for these measures. And it's surprising that members opposite don't want to actually study these measures because they don't really want to hear, because they already voted against it. Let me remind everybody, you already voted against these measures that are getting glowing recommendations, reviews, and support from every single stakeholder out there. So maybe that's why you don't want to study it, because you're really not interested in doing what's good for Canadians. You're just interested in delaying the budgets because you don't want the government to look good and get the win to help Canadians and help the Canadian economy, which is really, it's a shame. It's shameful, actually, that is the state of unfortunately, the opposition parties today, that they can't bring themselves to do the job that they were elected to do, which is to work on behalf of their constituents. It's not to block Parliament from doing its work on a budget bill that includes measures that are highly beneficial to our economy, especially in a trade war. You'd think, at least in the pandemic, I saw a bit of a moment where we had parties work together for a period of time, at least, until Conservatives went off the rails. But, you know, we had a moment when we were in crisis where it seemed like people kind of came together and we said, okay, let's put partisan politics aside and let's actually get some things done here, because Canadians really are counting on us and there's lives at stake. So when Conservatives stand up in the House every day and shout and holler and rage farm and say they care about this and care about that, food bank lineups and workers, how can you honestly say that stuff and then come to committee and not be willing to support productivity boosting investments in Canada? How can you do that? You're not supporting workers. These measures are going to support workers. These measures are going to support investments into businesses that grow our economy and have more workers employed, that have workers get real wages that are higher than inflation, which has been the case for 33 months in a row, by the way. I know my stats, and we're actually doing fairly well with regards to real wage growth in this country, but we need to do even better. These are going to make it even better. They're going to help us outcompete the United States in terms of our marginal effective tax rate. Isn't that what we want? We want to do better. We want what's better for our constituents and our business community. Well, I feel like I'm digressing. It seems like there's no sense in the Conservative members today that they're not going to be reasonable. But let me quote the World Tax and Law. So there's an editorial that was published in World Tax and Law. So there's a quote here: businesses investing in machinery, manufacturing facilities, clean energy equipment, and research and development assets will benefit from faster depreciation and a significant reduced marginal effective tax rate, estimated to fall to 13.2%, one of the lowest in the G7. The goal, according to the government, is to enhance productivity while driving the green transition, ensuring that investment incentives are aligned with sustainability objectives. I mean, that's great. So to me, that's a quote from an editorial that was published, which is interesting. So it's another sort of endorsement that makes sense. I think they've linked it to the green transition, which I agree it is to some degree, but it's not only that. These productivity gains would be linked to all aspects of the Canadian economy. Whether you're building a major piece of infrastructure anywhere in the economy, whether it's in Quebec or North Coast BC, the transmission line or transmission corridor, or whether you're, helping the Inuit-led project up in Iqaluit, to build a hydroelectric project, which will divert 15 million liters of diesel fuel from having to be burned to power those communities. Because these measures apply across the board, I had some businesses say to me, well, do these apply to all businesses? In fact, they do. So I think there's only one that is more focused, or is going to be more focused on processing and manufacturing, but most of them are right across the board. So they really are significant for all businesses, no matter where you are. Every business has to pay their taxes, so tax deductions would be welcome news, you would think, right? I remember the Conservatives had said at one point that they wanted to give Canadians tax breaks. So here we are giving businesses tax breaks at a time where they need it, where uncertainty is high, where our supply chains need support, and they won't support that. Seems contradictory. There's another editorial on warehouse automation. Ottawa has introduced a productivity superdeduction, a sweeping set of measures to stimulate private investment in machinery, buildings, technology, and intellectual property. The message is clear. The path to a stronger economy runs through modernization, automation, and digital capability. So you have two quotes here. One is more focused on the green transition, another is more focused on this sort of modernization, automation, digital capabilities. It supports both equally, right? I mean, these measures support all kinds of businesses to make these productivity boosting investments. We have another editorial, Lawson Lundell, lawyer, I guess, November 6, 2025. Budget 2025 reinforces Canada's commitment to building a low-carbon economy by extending and expanding several clean energy tax credits. So that one is relevant as well. How about this one? Northbridge Consultants, and I quote, "The most exciting news for forward-thinking companies lies in the new incentives bundled under the banner Supercharging Growth, particularly the confirmed and enhanced changes to the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program and the new Superdeduction Initiative. These measures are designed to immediately improve cash flow, reduce the cost of capital, reward businesses that take risks, and drive innovation in Canada. The window for maximizing these benefits is now. So that's Northbridge Consultants' editorial analysis, which was published online. Northbridge is the insurance company, I think, right? Yeah. But anyway, they are saying exactly what I've been saying, which is that the benefits, like businesses shouldn't have to wait for these benefits. They shouldn't have to wait for the certainty that the government can provide with Budget 2025, the certainty that says these deductions are passed through Parliament, gained royal assent, and will apply in the following tax year, so that they have the certainty that they need in order to invest. You know, to me, it just makes no sense that we would delay in a time of where uncertainty in the world and in our economy and in the business environment is so elevated that all of us are aware of that. It's a shame that we would have members on this committee be delaying people from accessing those, or at least having the certainty that those would be available. And I think that that's the key, is that we set out in Budget 2025, in the process of developing the budget, was to say that this level of uncertainty can't become the norm, that it is important for us as a government to provide as much certainty as possible. And there's a number of ways that governments can provide more certainty. Obviously, we don't control the entire economy, but at least where we can, we're signaling benefits, we're signaling investments, we're signaling a number of things for longer term that provide guardrails and more certainty in a very uncertain world. And I think that that's exactly what the kinds of things we need to do. So here's another quote, a guy named Paul Davenport, another editorial analysis done on November 5th, 2025. He says, Budget 2025 delivers the most significant SHRED program enhancements in over a decade. The expenditure limit for enhanced refundable credits has jumped from $3 million to $6 million. Capital expenditures are back, and the government is investing $110 billion over 5 years in productivity and competitiveness measures. So this is a bundle of productivity and competitiveness measures. So no one can claim that we're not focused on productivity in Budget 2025, especially given all that I've taken the time here to build in terms of a case of support for not only the productivity super deductions, but also the SHRED program and the capital expenditures associated with it, because those are now eligible for the SHRED program. The SHRED program is, in a way, part of the bundle for capital investments in the productivity super deduction package, because what we're proposing to do is to make changes to capital investments and capital expenditures under what is allowable in the SHRED program. We've also increased and enhanced the refundable credit limit from $3 million to $6 million. So we've doubled it in size, and this is the workhorse. This is the flagship workhorse for offsetting the cost of research and development in our business world all across Canada. I remember I got to go and host a conversation at the Toronto Stock Exchange with many, many businesses that attended, including the CEO, John McKenzie, who was asking for the SHRED program to be modernized in these specific ways, to allow some of the pre-revenue listed companies that were smaller in size, a lot in the clean tech industry, but they wanted these changes made. We went above and beyond the changes they asked for with the SHRED program. And in fact, we have, created a package of other productivity boosting measures that basically give businesses tax breaks for making any capital investment in their business. All of that, as I've been saying, is going to help boost productivity and growth. It's going to help boost GDP per capita. Is going to enhance the real wage growth in Canada, which is already 33 months in a row beyond inflation and the cost of living. Let me also quote another quote from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada, so Nicholas Vincent again. And this was published in Investing News on November 19th, 2025. He said, "There is no quick or easy way to improve productivity. No single sector can do it alone. If we want to fix this, we'll need to be thoughtful, systematic, and resolute." And then he says, he suggests that policymakers should focus on improving the country's investment climate, increasing competition, and developing talent. So that's interesting. So he's giving us advice. The Bank of Canada doesn't do that too often. I note that we don't give them advice, and they don't really give us advice. But you know, he's essentially showing support for boosting the country's investment climate. There's no way to say, there's really no argument to be made that these productivity super deductions don't achieve that. In fact, that they do. I think every stakeholder in the country, from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Alberta Minister of Finance, the Ontario Minister of Finance, the mayor of the City of Toronto, the mayor of Vancouver, it doesn't matter what political stripe you come from, you understand that when you give businesses the ability to immediately expense new machinery and equipment, new intellectual property protections, when you give them the ability to purchase new technology, whether clean technology or information technology, and integrate it into their business, or offset the cost of R&D, or purchase a new building or real estate asset, you are essentially giving them the ability to invest now at a time and take a risk that they wouldn't otherwise take in an environment that is strained with uncertainty. That's pretty significant. And it seems like every stakeholder that I've taken the time, Mr. Stevenson, you weren't here for all this, so I could repeat it for you. But we have lots and lots of testimony here that it would be great if we had, a study on the BIA. I'm sure you coming in a little bit past your other members here would be convinced by reason. I'm certain that you're a reasonable person. I'm absolutely certain of it, that your business community, I'm sure, your Chamber of Commerce, I can't remember what riding you're from, but I'm sure you have a Chamber of Commerce, just like I do, that support productivity super deductions, as the Canadian Chamber does, the Ontario Chamber does, my local chamber does. I know that for a fact because I've spoken with them. In fact, these are things that they've asked for. How about this? There's other good stakeholders here that made these recommendations in our pre-budget consultation that this committee received. And by the way, I'll make this point as well. Members opposite actually complained that we didn't have enough testimony in this committee on the pre-budget consultation, which is very interesting, because they also blocked our ability to have that testimony here. Now we have the budget and the Budget Implementation Act, and now they don't want to study the BIA. They don't want to hear from the witnesses again. I suppose later, when we eventually come to some realization and study the BIA, then they'll say, oh, well, we don't have enough time, and we want to hear from more witnesses. I guarantee that's what's going to happen. Mr. Kelly's already agreeing with that. That tends to be how it goes. It's what's true in one moment is not true the next moment. It's a flip-flop, whatever goes. Doesn't matter whether we're reasonable people or not. It's unfortunate, but that's exactly what I see. But let's take Cenovus Energy. I'm sure some of the members know the company, Cenovus Energy. I'm sure you would know them, eh? Mr. Stevenson, do you know Cenovus Energy? Mr. Kelly? I suppose you... No, I'm evoking the SIMS
Okay,
protocol.
thanks. I have the floor
It's
now?
the SIMS protocol.
No, that's not a thing.
Yes, it is, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it
Mr.
is.
Kelly, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it is actually a thing. I've used it in
page is it
procedure
on?
in House Affairs Committee in the middle of the
which page
pandemic
in-
when you
which
guys
page
were
in the Green Book is it on?
filibustering to prevent us from having a hybrid parliament in order to pass legislation in the middle of a global pandemic. So I used the SIMS protocol there. I learned it from Scott Sims, and it is a thing. And you can ask the clerk if you like, but the SIMS protocol is a thing. And it's an informal practice that's been used in many parliamentary committees. I'm surprised, Mr. Kelly, I know you were the chair of a committee, and I thought you were a procedural expert, and I'm surprised that you don't know that. Makes me feel good, though, because maybe I know something you don't know. Who knows? Well, at this moment, it seems true. But anyway, Cenovus Energy, I'll get back to them. I'm sure you guys know them. They have said in the pre-budget consultation recommendations that they submitted this to this committee, where they probably would have liked the opportunity to come and testify, but weren't allowed an opportunity by members opposite. They said, this is their recommendation, provide 100% capital cost allowance for new capital investments. That will demonstrably, improve Canada's economic productivity. I'll go on to read the rest. There's another quote, renew and enhance the Accelerated Investment Initiative to restore competitiveness with the United States. So those are two quotes from Cenovus Energy that are straight out of their pre-budget consultation submission that I know members opposite likely support Cenovus Energy, and yet they won't allow us to even study or hear from them on the BIA to come and tell us exactly that we're doing the right thing from their perspective, which is we're doing what they asked us to do, which is kind of remarkable that members opposite wouldn't even support a major energy company that operates in their jurisdiction. But I guess that's what you get with the Conservatives today. Canadian manufacturers and exporters. Here's another really important stakeholder. I'm sure all of us want to see our manufacturers and exporters do well. In their pre-budget consultation submission, and I remember because I actually met with them during the pre-budget consultation, they attended one of the sessions that I hosted, and they told me the same thing, which was they advocated very strongly for these immediate expensing measures. Now, they didn't call them productivity super deductions. We relabeled it that way, which I think is a great label. It sounds good, and it's supercharging our economy is a good thing. You can't disagree with that, in my view, especially during a trade war. But always, it's universally for me, that we want to boost our economy in Canada and have a healthier, stronger economy. But let's see what the Canadian manufacturers and exporters had to say in their pre-budget consultation recommendation. So this is a direct quote. Expand and upskill the manufacturing workforce, increase incentives, and enact reforms to stimulate innovation, investment, and the adoption of advanced technologies in Canada's manufacturing sector. That's interesting because that's exactly what they told me when we met in the summertime before we formulated the budget. And they also had mentioned the immediate expensing and accelerated depreciation, which they have advocated for over 15 years, I believe, that it's been talked about. So we did some things in a previous budget, which was capital cost allowance and accelerated investment initiative. But I think what we're doing in this budget is significantly more aggressive, and it provides a lot more benefit to businesses. Mr. Stevenson wasn't here for this, but page 88 in the budget, if you're looking for a reference, there's a box in there which provides information on the costing, but also the benefits in terms of economic output of crowding in private capital. It says $9 billion annually over the next 10 years. So $2.7 billion on average annual support for investment during the years that the immediate expensing accelerated depreciation measures would apply, with $9 billion annually in benefits. So a 3-time multiplier at least. It's more than that, but a significant amount. So $9 billion over 10 years is $90 billion. I'm no mathematician, but even I can add that up. 90 billion is better than not having it, better than zero. So here's another Association of Equipment Manufacturers, AEM. So they put a pre-budget consultation submission in on August 1st, 2025. They said AEM member companies have the tools required to foster a robust domestic Canadian economy and unleash resources that help meet the needs of Canadians. Association of Equipment Manufacturers members, products and innovation are essential to building critical infrastructure, supporting housing development, and driving productivity in key sectors such as agriculture, forestry, construction, mining, and energy. By enabling large-scale projects, AEM member products help fuel economic growth, job creation, and regional development across the country. Their contribution strengthens supply chains and ensures Canada remains competitive amid trade disruptions. They also point to the fact that they support more than 152,000 workers and contribute $41 billion a year to the national economy. And they have said, for equipment manufacturers to help build, power, and feed the world, policymakers must make critical infrastructure investments across Canada, and they call on policymakers to prioritize export-focused infrastructure as well as improving Canada's economic security and competitiveness for generations to come. So, I mean, in essence, they're saying, you know, they support, and I know because I met with them as well, that they support the productivity super deductions because their members will benefit from it. So their members will, imagine equipment manufacturers in Canada, $41 billion a year to the national economy, and Conservatives and Bloc members don't want them to have deductions that would enhance their ability to invest in boosting their productivity and growth. How about the Canadian Labour Congress? They say the underperformance of Canada's economy is a direct result of underinvestment in productivity-enhancing machinery and equipment. The U.S. investment in M&E has increased almost 50% since 2008. That's exactly why we need to do these very things that we're doing in Budget 2025, is to be competitive with the United States, is to boost productivity. And it's exactly what they're saying, is that by offering investment incentives or tax incentives for investment, that we'll have more investments in machinery and equipment, and that will boost our productivity. Again, the association has said, and multiple times, the Canadian Labour Congress, that Canada's productivity growth has been struggling, and that's exactly why we want to boost it. So I have more to say on this. I wanted to just see here. Yeah, so I know that the semiconductor industry, so the Canada Semiconductor Council, for example, has said that the industry generated $28.8 billion in output and contributed $16.3 billion in value added to the economy. Canada's automotive sector also is very significant, as we know. Both of them support the productivity super deductions as well. So there is lots and lots and lots of stakeholders and evidence that support these super deductions. I urge members opposite to come to their senses and work on behalf of their business communities and not, slow down investments in the economy that are really, truly needed it would be great if members opposite were willing to study the BIA because the Budget Implementation Act has this in it as one small package of measures that are going to help address the many, many challenges that our country faces and really support our business community right across Canada. So I hope that they'll come to their senses and agree to this motion. And with that, I'll yield the floor to one of my colleagues. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Just following up on the question you asked at the outset, we had 4 hours and 15 minutes available. I guess we're at just under 3 hours at this point, given you've spoken for an hour and a half. 4 hours and 15 minutes additional to total. There you go. Okay, so with that, I have Mr. McDonald on the list next.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning to, well, I guess it's afternoon now, to everyone else here. I'm pleased to speak in favor of this motion. I have the floor, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to speak in favor of this motion. I will admit, with some flight problems and things yesterday, I wasn't overly excited getting up this morning, but after listening to the member from Whitby, I'm getting supercharged now. So, yeah. So I will carry on. So we know that Budget 2025 is reinforcing Canada as one of the most tax competitive jurisdictions for new business investment in the G7. So we're going to make Canada one of the best places in the world to invest. And the name itself, the productivity super deduction, as the member from Whitney has pointed out, I'm not sure where it came from, but it is very collective of the measures that are in this motion. So paired with a suite of accelerated depreciation tools, we're going to make it easier and more affordable for Canadian businesses, large and small, to invest in modern machinery, technology, clean equipment, and innovation. And if we take a look at the various components outlined in the budget, there's accelerated investment incentive and immediate expensing. We're going to boost productivity and attract investment. This new government of ours is introducing a productivity super deduction. So through a set of enhanced tax incentives covering all new capital investment, we're allowing businesses to write off a larger share of their cost of these investments right away. And this will make it easier for businesses to invest and grow. So I also attended a budget consultation over the summer in Charlottetown, PEI, and we met with various seafood processors, agriculture and agri-food processors, farm groups, fishers groups, and I was so pleased to see this included in the budget because it was something that was brought up to us at that meeting, the importance of reinstating the accelerated depreciation to 100% for investment in those very vital industries to Atlantic Canada and the area that I represent. If we take a look at other measures that are in this motion, we're going to be reinstating the accelerated investment incentive. So governments restoring accelerated write-offs so businesses can recover the cost of new investments more quickly. This is going to improve the cash flow for these businesses. It's going to strengthen the business case for modernizing equipment and facilities. In manufacturing and processing equipment, they will be able to immediately deduct the full cost of new machinery and equipment, 100% write-off the first year. So this is going to support all those industries which I previously mentioned, like food processing, advanced manufacturing, marine, aerospace, and agri-food processing. This will help drive automation, precision manufacturing, and global competitiveness. Then we look at another item that's getting incentivized. You look at immediate expensing for clean energy and zero-emission technologies. So Budget 2025 is going to expand this to include clean energy generation, energy conservation equipment, zero-emissions vehicles and related infrastructure, and it will support the transition to a low-carbon economy while lowering operating costs for local businesses or all businesses. In my region in Atlantic Canada, we have a shortage of electricity, and so incentivizing this clean energy is going to help with windmill expansion. We're also going to need expansion of the solar energy. We look also to more hydro development, transmission cables. All this stuff is going to be incentivized by the super productivity deduction. We also have in here the immediate expansion of productivity enhancing assets. So things like patents, data, digital infrastructure, computers and software. This will encourage companies to adapt digital tools, artificial intelligence, and modern data systems, which are key drivers of productivity. We also have the immediate expensing for scientific research and experiment, or SR&ED. This will allow firms to fully expense their capital expenditures tied to innovation and R&D. It also makes it more attractive for Canadian companies to develop and commercialize new technologies here at home rather than abroad. So we will be able to manufacture items that we can market around the world, and that aligns with the Prime Minister's commitment that we will be exporting 50% more around the world in 10 years' time. So why is this important? Because we're stimulating competitiveness and productivity. We're lowering Canada's tax burden on investment. These measures reduce the meter on new business investment by more than 2 percentage points. And this will give Canada the lowest meter in the G7. A lower meter means that we're more competitive in the investment climate. We lower the cost of capital for Canadian firms, and we offer stronger incentives to invest in equipment, technology, and innovation. We're also crowding in private investment with this measure. By reducing the after-tax cost of buying new machinery and technology, Canada can generate billions in additional private sector investment. This strengthens Canada's productivity position at a time when global competition is intensifying. We're also supporting economic growth and middle-class jobs. So higher productivity means, and we heard from the Bank of Canada governor at this committee several weeks ago now, but he spoke of Canada having a stagnant growth rate and that we had to improve productivity. This measure is directly targeting that productivity. So we should be able to produce higher wages over time, more efficient businesses, stronger economic growth, and better global competitiveness for Canadian industries. We know that the governor of the Bank of Canada told us here at committee that higher wages also improve affordability for Canadians. So these are all good measures that are tied together. And then you have a local economic impact, and for a region like mine in Atlantic Canada, these measures are going to help modernize our food processing facilities. They're going to support that clean energy expansion in rural communities, which is badly needed in my province of PEI. We're going to strengthen our agri-food producers, processors, and manufacturing. And we're also going to encourage the tech adoption and digital transformation for small and medium-sized businesses. So this supports Eastern PEI to benefit directly from new investment and job creation. Budget 2025's productivity super deduction positions Canada as a global leader in investment competitiveness. It's making it easier and more affordable for businesses to invest now. We are laying the foundation for stronger long-term growth, higher wages, and a more productive Canadian economy. And as we relate that to the industry that I came from, I was a dairy farmer for 40 years before I offered to run in the previous election. And what I seen from that industry is a real need for business people to adopt new technology. And now new technology comes at a high capital cost. It's particularly in agriculture, most agricultural operations carry a larger than normal debt load. Even in 2024, I think the statistics show that the average debt load of a farm increased by 14%. Now, agricultural commodities are trading well, but we're in a world where the cost of labor has gone up a lot, the cost of inputs have gone up. So by accelerating or offering accelerated tax breaks to all industries, but particularly in agriculture too, and agri-food processing, we're going to see farmers adopt more technology to address labor shortages, to address the need to be competitive in the world market. I see in the, in the dairy industry, for instance, robotic milking is becoming the norm rather than, an infrequent investment. We're seeing many farms across Canada change over to robotic milking, which lessens the labor demand for a fairly intensive commitment on a dairy farm. We also, in my region, have a lot of seafood processors. Again, labor availability is a challenge to them, and they have spoke to me pretty well. Every processor I visited over the summer spoke about the need for accelerated depreciation to help them modernize and bring in new technology for their fish processing plants. So I'm pleased to see this measure in the budget. I'm disappointed that we weren't able to get consensus on the member from Whitby's motion here today. I think a study of the BIA, while the House works through the process of bringing the bill here for implementation, would have been time well spent. And I also just would like to encourage members opposite to reconsider, and we'll be more than willing to stop debate if we can move to an agreement on a BIA study. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I have Mr. Sawatsky.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair,
Point of order, Madam
I'd
Chair.
like to
Sorry, Mr. Sawatsky. Yes, Mr. Dennis?
Here, and I was here at the beginning, and I believe Mr. Kelly had his name up. And I think he's next. I don't quite understand how you've gone from liberal to liberal to liberal without even seemingly looking at the side of the table. So I think Mr. Kelly should be next on the list.
Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Dennis. I appreciate that. I have him on the list, but he was on the list before the motion was introduced, so he's on the main speaking list as opposed to this. But if he would like to get on the list for the motion, then I'm very happy to put him there.
I thought I had done so, but yes, well,
Okay, I will add you to the list. Thank you very much.
not really.
Mr. Sawatsky, please continue.
thank you, Madam Chair. So as we've been talking about, it's really important that we can get put through this productivity super deduction. It's this is something that we've been discussing, and I really hope that we can make some movement here, because some of these steps are really important. I think would be very well received by the business community, particularly every business that I've spoken to about some of these measures have certainly seen the immediate benefit here. I mean, Canada right now is at a pivotal moment, and we're facing these challenges that are defining our future, and it's really important that we become more productive as a country right now and have some measures that will help that out. If we want higher wages and stronger growth and a competitive edge against the United States and the world, we'll need to invest, and we need to do that now. And for our country to invest, we need to allow, of course, our businesses to invest in themselves. So that's why, of course, this new productivity super deduction will make us the most competitive country in the G7 for new investment. That's a plan. That's not a slogan here. Will help businesses invest, expand, and hire. So, I mean, this is clearly a thing that we need to do as soon as possible, and that is why it's really important that we move towards the BIA and are able to implement some of these things. Some of the things that the productivity super deduction can do is like manufacturing and processing machinery and equipment, allowing immediate write-offs for those, also for clean energy generation and conservation equipment, for zero-emission vehicles, for productivity-enhancing assets like patents, data networks, and computers, for scientific research and experimental development. These are all things that if we allow businesses to invest in themselves, the businesses will become more productive, They will be able to pay higher wages. They will be able to become more efficient. And if all of our businesses in Canada are becoming more productive and more efficient, that will certainly grow the economy to a large extent. So not only are we doing this, but we're going further. There's immediate expensing for manufacturing and processing buildings acquired after budget day and used before 2030. So if you think about how expensive these buildings would be for those to be expensed immediately, are very that's very significant. There's accelerated capital cost allowances for low carbon LNG facilities with the highest standards for emissions performance, and that of course helps us move towards our climate goals. And the private investment here drives productivity. Every dollar invested in this new machinery and technology and clean energy will help workers produce more in less time. And yeah, that boosts wages, it strengthens growth, it keeps Canada competitive, and is very, very important for us. With these measures, Canada's marginal effective tax rate will drop by more than 2 percentage points. So we need to be a competitive place for investment right now on the international level. We want to be somewhere where across the world, other countries, investors in other countries are looking at Canada as a place that is a smart place to invest, is a country that is open to investment and will be competitive with our marginal effective tax rate to ensure that people are seeing the return on their investment. So we'll have the lowest marginal effective tax rate in the G7. That's lower than the US. That's lower than the OECD average. So that's, of course, very significant. In manufacturing, Canada's METR will be 12.1%, and that's compared to 23.3% in the US. So you think about that, 12.1% marginal effective tax rate compared to 23.3% in the United States, which is, of course, a country that is also very competitive for investment, but we're getting close to almost half their METR. That's a game changer for competitiveness, and that will certainly see a return and large investments into our country, which right now, as we've mentioned, is critical for our economy at the moment. So let's talk about the numbers a little bit more. So we've got $2.7 billion per year in accelerated depreciation and expensing support. We've got up to $9 billion per year in economic output over the next decade. There's billions in private investment unlocked for Canadian factories, for clean tech, for innovation. And if you think about manufacturing, for example, let's take a Canadian manufacturer that wants to invest in new robotics to boost output. So under the productivity super deduction, they can write off 100% of that cost immediately. So that's not 90%, not 95%, 100% immediately. That means more investment, more jobs, more experts. But by delaying the BIA, Conservatives are delaying that process. And there's a lot of businesses right now that really need the support right away. They cannot wait. Of course, layoffs are happening. The economy is in a tight spot, and it's really important that we're able to help these businesses out as soon as possible, because people's jobs are at stake here. Every day, every week that this continues to be delayed, are more people getting laid off. It's a very unfortunate fact, but that's why it's so critical that we're able to make progress here, move towards this BIA. So let's take clean energy, for example. So a company wants to build a solar farm or upgrade to zero-emission vehicles. So under our plan, they can expense those costs right away. So that means also cleaner air, lower emissions, and a stronger economy. So Conservatives are saying no to that, right? It's this is not only good for businesses, this is good for our environment, because we have these measures that would, be, if they were to be in place, would be also, we'd be moving more towards net zero. We'd have more zero emission vehicles on the road, and we'd have, for example, more solar farms, and a lot of new tech that would be moving us towards a cleaner economy. Let's take innovation, for example. A tech firm wants to invest in patents, in data networks, in research and development. Under our plan, they can expense those costs immediately. So that also allows them to innovate more, have more intellectual property, and gain more global competitiveness. And of course, conservatives are saying no to that as well. Productivity super deductions increase real wages compared to the cost of living over time, which is exactly what we are focused on here. So the CPC has previously expressed support for multiple measures included in the BIA, such as multi-unit residential building tax incentive, eliminating the underused housing tax, introducing a productivity super deduction, increasing the lifetime capital gains exemption. So now it's up to them to decide whether we want to support these measures, because failing to do so proves again that we're playing politics here, and we just don't want to actually see good things for Canadians. And that's I think it's given the track record of seeing, you know, what the CPC has advocated for, and then when it comes to actually putting forward the BIA and making moves to completely fall flat there, I think it makes it pretty clear, you know, what's going on. Do they support the productivity super deduction? I would assume so, based on the track record of what they've been advocating for. It's a set of enhanced tax incentives covering all new capital investments. It allows businesses to write off a very large share of the cost of those investments right away. But they're blocking that. They're blocking the BIA. That's the very legislation that makes this possible. I mean, let's be clear. It's blocking the BIA means blocking GST for first-time home buyers. There's many people that right now that are looking for any amount that they can save in buying a new home, and they're not able to do that. Blocking the BIA means blocking Build Canada Homes. Our $13 billion plan to build affordable housing at scale. Again, this is very much needed right now. People are living paycheck to paycheck with their rent. People need affordable housing, and some people are losing their homes because they simply can't afford it, and they need the government to be able to invest into building more housing and bringing the cost of housing down, so that we can be a place where more people are able to afford homes. I mean, the young generation right now is in a crisis because there is the cost of housing is much higher than we need it to be, and the government has made it clear that there is a plan. The plan is with Build Canada Homes, there will be a clear path towards bringing down the cost of housing, increasing the supply, increasing the amount of housing starts, and that is just unfortunately not going through because we're not able to make any kind of motion here on the BIA. Blocking the BIA also means blocking the productivity super deduction. So, you know, as we've talked about, that's the measure that will make Canada the most competitive country in the G7 for new investments. The most competitive country. More competitive by a large margin than the United States. That is so much needed right now. We talk all the time about, yeah, we want to be more competitive. Here's a plan. That's the plan to be more competitive. There's an opportunity to do that, and it's being stalled. So conservatives, they're talking about competitiveness and about affordability, but when it comes time to vote, they're choosing to delay and to obstruct. I mean, we hear a lot of slogans, of course, about a lot of things, typically 3-word slogans. However, slogans are not plans. We've put forward a plan. This is a plan right here, and there's no progress. So on November 14th, in the Standing Committee on Industry and Technology, there's some quotes from Namir Anani, the President and Chief Executive Officer, Information and Communications Technology Council on Productivity Superdeductions. So to quote Anani here, tax policy must play a central role. Budget 2025's new productivity superdeduction and enhanced capital cost allowance are significant steps in the right direction. Together, they make Canada's cumulative manufacturing tax incentives slightly more competitive than those in the United States. These measures will help de-risk capital investment decisions and encourage companies to modernize and expand here at home. If government can continue to reduce barriers, modernize regulation, upgrade infrastructure, and sustain a competitive tax environment, Canada can begin to repatriate lost manufacturing. Converting even part of the 55% of imported center store goods into domestically produced products would create thousands of new jobs, strengthen regional supply chains, and drive productivity growth in creating a level of food sovereignty that we have not experienced for many years. That's a very moving quote here. He goes on to say, certainly the federal budget goes a long way toward achieving those with the productivity superdeduction. And then proceeds to say, indeed, it's important to help small or medium-sized businesses, SMEs, to acquire those technologies. I'd say that the federal government's newly announced program on introducing a productivity superdeduction is on the right track. So the government's plan to enable $1 trillion in total investments over the next 5 years in Canada. That's $1 trillion in total investments. If we think about the amount that will help our economy and really jumpstart at a really slow time where companies are dealing with the impacts of trade disputes with our longest trading partner, the United States. You know, we've been severely disrupted. With a plan to enable $1 trillion in total investments, that's very timely and very, very critical. So through targeted tax incentives, major infrastructure projects, stronger competition, and a bold new approach to attracting talent, Budget 2025 sets the foundation for long-term prosperity so that we can build the strongest economy in the G7. The government's plan to enable $1 trillion in total investments in 5 years includes the following measures. Productivity superdeduction to make it easier to do business and invest in Canada. Budget 2025 reinstates the accelerated investment incentive and includes immediate expensing for manufacturing or processing machinery and equipment, clean energy generation and energy conservation equipment, and zero-emission technologies. It also moves forward with immediate expensing for productivity-enhancing assets and research capital expenditures for scientific research and experimental development, and introduces immediate expensing for new manufacturing or processing buildings and accelerated depreciation for low-carbon LNG facilities. Together, these measures form a productivity superdeduction that will lower costs, spur private investments, and reduce Canada's marginal effective tax rate to 13.2%, reinforcing Canada as the most tax-competitive country for new business investment in the G7. Very, very important. I mean, the marginal effective tax rate to 13.2%, I think that really says it all, is that by bringing that down, people will be looking, where do we invest? these are companies from across the world that will be thinking, where's the best place? So not only do they see Canada's reputation as a global leader in promoting peace, in being a safe place that is accepting of all people, has a high code of ethics and care, and has a reputation for people just in general being very nice and a good place to live, a very beautiful place to live with lots of nature and lots of industries. But now not only are we taking all of that, but now we're adding on that the marginal effective tax rate is 13.2%, and actually making us a very competitive place to be from a business standpoint. So that really gives us everything that somebody would want to invest into our country, and that is exactly what we need right now. And we can't afford to be wasting any more time in getting to the BIA. It's so important that we get to this so that we can put these measures through. Accelerated investment incentive, which provides an enhanced first-year allowance for certain eligible property that is subject to the capital cost allowance rules. In general, the incentive is made up of two elements: applying the prescribed CCA rate for a class up to 1.5 times the net addition to the class for the year, and suspending the CCA half-year rule and equivalent rules for Canadian vessels and Class 13 property. It also includes full expensing for manufacturers and processors, which allows businesses to immediately write off the cost of machinery and equipment used for the manufacturing or processing of goods. Full expensing for clean energy investments, which allows businesses to immediately write off the full cost of specified clean energy equipment. So I think I've made it pretty clear, kind of the outline of why it is so important that we move towards the BIA. I think my colleagues have made that pretty clear as well. I really hope that we can get to that as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sawatsky. Mr. Letao?
Très bien. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So it's now my turn to talk about my colleague, Mr. Turnbull's motion, and more generally about the budget. I'll be brief. Well, relatively brief anyway. Everything's relative in life. Everything is always relative. So why is my colleague's motion that I support in passing? Obviously. Why is this motion so important? Well, it's important for two reasons. First of all, we have to begin the work on implementing this budget. And as you've all seen, of course, there are many, many measures included in this budget, and they need to be worked on now. They need parliamentary work. So it's important that we begin this work so that these measures can be implemented. Madam Chair, I would add that the motion is important because my colleague has really zeroed in on the investment side of these measures, what's required to speed up investment, including this super productivity super deduction, in order to encourage businesses to invest today, because it's today that we need these investments. So I think his motion is a very important one for these reasons and deserves a discussion here in committee. But I'd just start off with a couple of comments. First of all, generally speaking, the budget has been well received in Quebec. My colleague, Mr. Turnbull, spoke about the Minister of Finance in Ontario, Minister of Finance in Alberta, and I would add that the Minister of Finance in Quebec also felt.
Yeah. Madam Chair, this is, I think, the fourth Liberal
Not a
you've
point of
gone to
order.
without any Conservative. I respectfully, I think the management of the speaking list is not happening in the way it should.
Thank you,
I believe
Mr.
it should be Mr.
Jennis.
Kelly next.
Yeah, no, I mean, Mr. Jennis, I know you weren't here at the beginning of the meeting.
That's
so
not true, actually. I was here from the beginning of the meeting.
No, you weren't.
Yeah, I
Mr.
was in the
Jennis.
back.
No, I saw when you
Anyways,
came
that's
in.
not the point,
Mr.
but I
Jennis,
was
I think
here.
what's important is that I'm going based on the hands as they were raised. I appreciate your opinion, but their hands were raised first. When Mr. Kelly raised his hand and said after your intervention that he would like to join this part of the speakers list, I added him, and we have Mr. Letow, Mr. Turnbull, and then Mr. Kelly. So thank you very much for your
Madam Chair, I'm going to
decision.
challenge that decision of yours.
Can't challenge the chair on a point of order. You have to have the floor.
No, you don't have to have a floor to challenge
Thank you,
the chair.
Mr.
That is
Jennis. One
ridiculous.
moment, please. Thank you. So we'll go straight to a vote then.
So,
On the speakers list.
So, yeah, I need to know what we're voting on, sorry. Makes no sense.
so the vote is on shall the decision of the chair be sustained with regard to the speakers list? All those in favor, sorry, I will go, sorry about that. I will go roll by, name by name. So, Mr. Turnbull,
Well, I support the chair. Sustain.
Mr. Letow,
Bien sûr, oui, sustain.
Mr. Sawatsky,
Sustain.
Mr. McDonald,
Sustained.
right? Mr. Kelly? No. Mr. Williamson? Stevenson, sorry.
No.
Mr. Genuis?
No.
Mr. Lefebvre? No. And Mr. Saint-Marie?
No.
Okay, so now what happens?
So, first of all, there is 4 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay. So the motion is,
no, sorry. Yes, the ruling of the chair is,
the ruling of the chair is defeated,
yes,
is overruled.
is overruled.
So now,
That means,
huh? So, yeah, Mr. Letow still has the floor in this instance. Right? So sorry, one second. Let me just refer with the. Okay, well, at this point, Mr. Letow still has the floor, so I'll allow him to continue, and then Mr. Kelly will be on the list. after
Point of
that.
order, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Jennis.
The point of the challenge was that Mr. Kelly should have been called on after multiple Liberals already spoke and because he had his hand up. So if I need to challenge the chair again to make clear the will of the committee, I will. I think we just voted on whether Mr. Kelly should have the chair, but if your ruling is that he should not have the chair, then the floor, pardon me, then we can challenge again.
I'm not going to give him the chair. Geez,
Yeah, well.
Louise, Mr. Jennis. Anyways, it wasn't clear, I believe, so I think you would have to do that again.
Okay.
Because as it stands, Mr. Letow still has the floor, and it was about the speaking list.
Okay.
So I would.
All right,
yeah.
I will respectfully challenge your ruling that Mr. Letow has the floor, based on the view that Mr. Kelly should have been given the floor and should have the floor.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to the clerk for this again.
Point of order, please.
You can't do a point of
No.
order just yet. You have to do it afterwards.
on the motion, should that the decision of the chair be sustained, Mr. Letow, Mr. Turnbull,
Sustain.
Mr. Letow,
Sustained.
Mr. Sawatsky,
Sustain.
Mr. McDonald,
Sustained.
Mr. Kelly, sorry, Mr. Stevenson, Mr. Genuis,
No.
Mr. Lefebvre,
No.
Monsieur Saint-Marie.
No.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, or sorry, go ahead.
It's your
Oh, okay.
thing.
Decision was overruled. Mr. Kelly, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I strongly suggest, Chair, that you work with your vice chairs to do something about the business of committees so that we don't have these kinds of meetings. And with that, I move that the meeting now adjourn.
Okay. Do we have is it the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting? Sorry, do we need to have an actual vote on this, or are we? Yeah, we're okay? Okay, all right, the meeting is adjourned.
You're welcome.
Next time.